Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 2025 Housing Inventory Count Survey Training. My name is Alexander Fuller, and we're going to go through quite a few slides today. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. Everyone is on mute. If you have any questions, please utilize the questions function in GoToWebinar. I'll try to answer as many questions in real time as possible. We also have Rochelle looking at the questions as well. So we'll try to answer as we're going through the presentation. We do have a question slide at the end. So any outstanding questions, we'll try to address those then. Some questions we might not be able to address on the call just due to the details of the specific question. But another thing is that this is going to be recorded. The slides and the webinar is going to be available on our help desk in the housing inventory count overview article. So that should be available by end of day today or first thing tomorrow. So to get started, what's on the agenda today is we're going to go over the summary and the purpose of completing the housing inventory count, the projects that are going to be required to participate, the timeline and the submission process. A couple of helpful tips prior to starting the survey. We're going to do a quick overview of each of the sections in the survey. We're going to go through each section and talk about some of the important questions in that particular section, or go over some of the questions that might cause a little confusion. And then we're going to provide some resources where you can follow up on after the call, and then we'll have time for any outstanding questions. So the purpose of the housing inventory count is that it's a one-night inventory count of projects within the COC that provides beds and units dedicated to serving persons who are homeless. It is intended to provide HUD and the COC with information about shelter and housing capacity of the homeless crisis response system. It should reflect the number of beds and units available for occupancy on the night of the PIC count. The purpose is that it helps to contribute to HUD reports, submitted reports, such as the LSA, the COC APR, the SPM. So all of the HUD reports are kind of tied together now, so they're all being compared to each other. So that helps with making sure all the data aligns between all of the reports. Bed unit inventory utilization for coordinated entry. So the unit inventory for PSH projects are, reviewed to determine if a project has space to receive another referral. A component of the COC's annual NOFO application. So the HIC submission numbers are included in the NOFO application in some capacity. So that also helps with that being accurate, and it informs the system's decisions with data. So a lot of the information that comes out of the system helps to determine next steps in terms of workflows, things that need to be looked into further, or different opportunities. So it's important that the HIC and point in time data is as accurate as possible. Okay, so who needs to submit a HIC survey? So for the HIC, a project with dedicated bed units is one where the primary intent of the project is to serve homeless clients. The project verifies homeless status as part of the eligibility determination, and the actual project clients are predominantly homeless or for permanent housing, where clients are homeless at entry. So the project types that are included in the housing inventory count that are going to participate is emergency shelter projects, both entry and exit and night by night, transitional housing, safe haven, permanent housing, which includes permanent supportive housing, wrapper housing, and then OPH, which is other permanent housing, which includes permanent housing with services, which has no disability requirement, as well as permanent housing only, which doesn't include services. One thing just to mention is that this includes projects that participate in HMIS and projects that do not participate in HMIS. So if your project is a DV project and you enter data in a comparable database, and one of your project types are listed here, then you are going to be required to participate in the housing inventory count. So we make sure we have your accurate inventory. Okay, timeline of submissions. So the housing inventory count survey is going to open on January 23rd, which is the point in time date. The survey link is available in the slides here, as well as in a couple of our help desk articles. If you click on the link prior to January 23rd, it's gonna let you know that it's gonna open on that date. So there's nothing that you can do prior to then. On February 3rd, we will send out a reminder email to providers, just letting them know that they have about a week left to complete the HICS surveys. And then on February 14th is when the HICS survey is going to close. So end of day on February 14th is the end of that. So the submission process, a separate HICS survey must be completed for each required project within your agency. So if you have 4 emergency shelter projects at your agency, you're going to need to complete 4 separate HICS surveys for each individual project. All surveys must be completed and submitted via Alchemer. PDF submissions will not be accepted. So within our help desk article, we do provide a PDF version of the survey. I'll talk a little bit more about it in the next slide, but that PDF version of the survey is not a substitute for submitting the survey via Alchemer. Any submissions that are received as a PDF submission will not be accepted, and we're going to ask that you complete the online Alchemer survey. We do have a housing inventory count reference table on the help desk, which is going to provide all of the HMIS projects, or all of the projects that's currently in HMIS that falls within the projects that would need to participate. I recommend that you review this list of projects that we have here, just to make sure you understand all the projects that we are expecting to participate. If there are any projects that's listed there that are no longer operational, we do ask that you complete a deactivation form so we can no longer include that in any of our operational projects. As well as if you have a project that's not listed, open up a ticket to the help desk. We'll be able to get that project added. And if you're a non-participating project and you don't see a project represented in HMIS for your non-participating project, you will also need to let us know so we can work to get that set up for you as well. And then again, all providers, both participating and non-participating, must submit surveys no later than 11:59 on Friday, February 14th. So that's the cutoff for the submissions. The survey will close at that time. So try to have everything in prior to the end of day on February 14th. Are there any questions before we move forward? Okay. So a couple of helpful tips before we go into the actual survey itself. The first thing is that have project information available prior to completing the survey. So the HICS survey is going to ask a lot of questions about the project, inventory, funding, a lot of questions. So it's good to have all of that information available prior to starting. Everything that you're submitting should be based on either your funding, so your grant documentation or your award letters. even you can use your renewal submission for a lot of these questions. So all of these things should match up with what the project is documented to serve. So if you're funded for a transitional housing project, you should represent that in this survey. So there shouldn't be any difference between what your project is funded to do or what you submitted in renewals than what you're going to put on this HICS survey. So it's good to have all that information available prior to completing or prior to starting the survey. Again, we do have a PDF version of the survey available on the help desk. I do recommend people to download that and make yourself aware of all of the questions being asked. That way you can make sure you're gathering all the right information to complete it. Another thing is that once you do begin to complete the survey, there is an opportunity to save and continue by clicking save and continue later at the top right of the survey. Once you do that, it is going to open up another pop-up window that's going to allow you to put in the email address that's going to send you a link so you can continue once you want to start again. One thing to note about this is that if you save and continue later, there's no way for us to resend that link to you. So it's very important that you put in the correct email address for the email and the verify email, just to make sure that you're going to receive the link to be able to continue. Okay, so we do have a question. Can you confirm street outreach teams are not participating? So for the housing inventory count, street outreach is not a project type that's looked at in the housing inventory count. So housing inventory count is really looking at projects with bid inventory. So street outreach wouldn't be included. And then is it possible to share a link to the PDF of the survey here? So we'll try to add that into the answer section here for you. But again, it's on the help desk. So if you go to the help desk, at the very top, you'll see the housing inventory count link. If you click on that, at the very top of that article is going to be the link to the survey. At the very bottom is going to be the PDF version. Okay, so the survey section overview. So the HICS survey will ask projects to verify data found in HMIS or that was reported in the 2024 housing inventory count. So projects will affirm or update data related or relating to the following elements of the project. So before we go into the sections, what this means is that the HICS survey that you're going to complete is not going to pre-populate any data for you. We do have a reference table of all the projects and a couple of data elements as they are now and as was either reported in the housing inventory count in 2024 or have been requested to be updated since. So when you're completing this survey, take a look at the reference table and the additional columns that's going to be talking about the inventory that's currently in HMIS, the project type, the target population, all of that is available on the reference table. So if anything changes, you're going to want to update it in the HICS survey. But if everything is staying the same or if things stay the same, then you can just put that same information on the HICS survey. So the sections in the survey is going to start off with the project information, which is pretty much just going to gather all the basic information about the project, including the site locations, the funding source. The next section is going to be the inventory and development, which is going to look at bids funded but not yet available. Section 3 is going to be for project type. Section 4, target population. Section 5 and 6 is going to be really where the inventory information is going to be captured, so your units and your bids. Section 7 is emergency shelter bids. So these are specific questions for emergency shelter projects only. So the way that the survey works in general is that the entire survey has a lot of conditional logic in it. So depending on how you're answering questions, additional questions will populate or additional sections will populate. So for example, section 7, which is for emergency shelter projects only. In section 3, if you choose emergency shelter as a project type, you'll get section 7 once you complete section 6. If you choose permanent supportive housing, once you complete section 6, it's going to automatically jump to section 8. So section 8 is going to be HMIS participation, and then section 9 is the night of January 23rd, 2025, which is pretty much dedicated to non-participating projects only. This section is going to capture all of the client counts as of the point in time date. Again, this section is conditional logic. So in section 8, if you indicate that the project is non-participating, or if you indicate, I believe it's in section 1 that the project is either DV, then that's what's going to populate section 9. So depending on how you're answering questions is going to determine what questions you see next. Okay, logging into the survey. So you will only need the project's HMIS ID number to log in. The HMIS ID will act as the username and the password for the survey. So for example, All Chicago has an emergency shelter project 883, which is the ID number assigned to that project. So if I'm a user and I'm enrolling clients into this particular project, when I select it to do my enrollment, I see this 883 number in HMIS. So that's the number that's assigned to the project. So that's the number that you're going to use for the username and the password. One thing to note about this is that, again, the reference table has all of the HMIS ID numbers that's going to correspond to the project that you're going to submit the surveys for. If you're a non-participating project and you don't see a project ID number for your project, or you don't see the project at all, you're going to need to reach out, and we're going to have to set that project up for you in HMIS so you're able to complete the survey. So if your project doesn't have a HMIS project ID number, you're not going to be able to move forward with the survey. So we're going to have to set that up prior to you being able to submit. Any questions on logging into the survey? Okay. So we're going to start going through all of the individual sections. To start off, we're going to go over the project information. So it's going to begin asking about the contact information. So this is going to be either the person that's completing the survey or the person that should be followed up with if any questions arise. So the first name, title, email address, phone number. The secondary contact is essentially the same. So this is going to be the information we'll use if we have any questions about the inventory, project types, anything that, seems odd. We'll reach out to this contact person first. And it's very important that the email address tied to this contact person is accurate, because this is going to be the email address once you submit that the confirmation email is going to go to. So if there's any misspellings in the email address, you're not going to receive the confirmation. Okay, so we do have a question. Will you be showing where in WellSky this is and what it looks like, a little demo? So this isn't available in HMIS, this is going to be a independent survey via Alchemer that you're going to complete. If there's time, I'll navigate to the article and kind of show what the PDF looks like, but it's not going to be an HMIS. Okay, also a part of the project information, the next question is going to ask about the operating start date for the project. The operating start date is when the project first started serving clients. So what this really means is that, for example, if a project funding starts on October 1st of 2024, and the project doesn't actually get created in HMIS, you're at your agency, you actually haven't staffed for the project yet, or you haven't started serving clients until the point in time date, January 23rd, 2025. That January 23rd is going to be your operating start date, and it's not going to be the date that the project received funding. Doing so creates quite a bit of problems, especially if it's a newly funded project, because what happens is that if the operating start date is the date of funding, but you really don't start operating your project until 6 months later, then your inventory is going to appear to be at zero utilization for 6 months, which isn't how it should be represented. So it's important that the operating start date is the date that the project first started serving clients. As you're completing this, if you realize that this project has ended prior to the point in time date, then again, please submit a project deactivation form via the article link here. There are a couple of prerequisites providers will need to do prior to us being able to officially close the project out, such as closing out all of the clients, just making sure all of that is situated. But once that's done, we'll be able to close that project out. The next question is going to be looking at the housing type for the project. This can be a bit confusing. So depending on the housing type, you're going to need to either put in the address or the zip code. So if you select single site, you will have to put in the address right below selecting it. And then on the next screen, it's going to ask about zip codes. So for domestic violence, if you select that, you will not need to put the address in the field below, but just the zip code. And again, the following screen is going to ask about additional zip codes that are that clients are utilizing within your project. For scattered sites, for projects such as Rapid Housing or permanent supportive housing, you're going to put the address of your main location of where that project is being operated. And then the following question, you're going to be able to select all the zip codes in which clients are being served under or in. Okay, we do have a question. What date will you use if you have more than one funder with different start dates? So it's not so much about the funder start dates. It's when you're actually starting to serve clients. So whenever that date is, that's the date that you're going to want to use, and not necessarily the date that the project is funded. Okay, so we do have a follow-up. We've been in operation for 70 years. So not when the agency started, but when the project actually started serving clients. So you started using the funding to serve clients under that project. If And this is really more focused to new projects that's just getting started. If your project has been in existence for some time, we have an operating start date for your project, and you know that start date, if it's prior to the current reporting range, then it's not that big of a concern. But again, the operating start date should be the date that the project first started serving clients. We have another question. This has to be done for each client. No, so you're not completing the HIC survey per client. You're going to be completing the survey per project. Okay, any questions on project information before we move to the next section? Okay, for wrap-area housing, will it be the date the first client is matched or when date of the client was housed? So it would be the date that the client was first matched. The first client matched would be the more accurate of the dates. Okay, so we have two more questions or a couple more under project information. So again, under project information is going to be the funding. This is really important to get as accurate as possible. One thing that I will mention is that there is a lot of conditional logic under this funding. So if you're clicking on things, be ready for additional questions to be asked. So for the first question is going to ask about the HUD McKinney funding. So if you have a project that's funded under that funding, you're going to select the exact HUD funding based on the project type or what it is. Underneath is a spot for you to enter the grant ID number. So if it's a HUD funded project, you have that grant ID number. It's going to be on your award letter. So you're going to put that in under there. At the very bottom of this question here is not shown. It's going to be the option for you to indicate that your project does not receive any of this funding. Once you do that, it'll move you to the next question. It's going to ask about other funding sources, such as unsheltered special NOFO, which is the SNOFO funding. If you're funded under DFSS or IDHS, you'll be able to select those. Again, for the HUD SNOFO, you'll be able to put the grant ID number. Again, that should be available on your award letter. For DFSS and IDHS projects, whatever ID number that's provided to you or unique number that indicates your project will go there as well. If you choose something such as funded through VA, RIDE, PATH, that's going to open up additional sections of questions to get exactly what funding it is. So example, if it's VA funding, the next set of questions is going to ask if it's SSVF, is it GPD funding? So you'll be able to select that. Any questions about funding before we move forward? Okay, so what if the project is funded as a subrecipient? So if you're a subrecipient, so for example, if you're funded under SNOFO and you're a subrecipient, you should have the grant ID number, but you'll still complete the funding based on what the funding is, not necessarily if it's direct funding or if it's funding through someone else. So for clarification, did you say that we have to put none for the funding that we don't receive? So anything that you don't receive, you don't have to put anything in the boxes. You'll only have to put something in the box of the answer that you selected. Okay, so section 2, inventory and development. So if your project number of bids or units increased or stayed the same between February 1st of 2024 and January 23rd, 2025, your inventory is considered current. So current bids are any bids or units available for occupancy on the night of January 23rd, 2025. So the housing inventory count, the unit and bid section that we're going to get to, that's going to be looking at the current bids. It's going to be looking at the current bids available. So that's what you're going to put for the night of the count. For this in development, under development section, is going to be for any bids or units that are fully funded in fiscal year 2024 and will not be available for occupancy on or after January 24th for 2025. So what this means is that if your project has received funding in fiscal year 2024 and the bids just aren't available as of the day of the point in time count, and they will be available again prior to the next point in time count, then those are going to be bids under development. So they're going to come online, they're just not online as of the point in time date. Okay, so we do have a question. Where will we get the operating date for each project? So again, it's going to be the first day that the client is served. If your project's been around for some time, it might be a little difficult to know exactly what date. But if you have any questions on what's there already, reach out to the help desk. I'll double check the reference table to see if that information is on there. I'm not 100% sure, but if it's not, I'll add that to the reference table. So if you look for your project, you can see the operating date that we have currently. And if you feel like it's different, then you can change it. If it's the same, then you'll just take that date and put it into the Higgs survey. Okay, so we do have another question. Are there any changes to the survey from last year? So there are a couple of changes towards the end of the sections, but I'll highlight those when we get to them. Okay, so the inventory and development, this section is going to first ask if you have any bids that fall under being inventory that's not available as of the point in time date. If you select yes, you'll have a conditional question that's going to ask for the number of bids and units in development. Keep in mind that these bids are different than the ones that you're going to represent as being available on the night of the count. So For example, if your project is funded for 100 bids and 50 bids aren't available yet, but only 50 bids are available on the night of the count, you're going to put 50 bids for in development. And when you get to the unit and bid section, you're going to put in 50 bids for that as well. So cumulatively, you have 100 bids, but only 50 was available as of the point in time date. Okay, section 3, project type. So the project types included are based on the most recently published 2024 data standards. So again, this information should come directly from your funder. If you're funded through DFSS, you should kind of know what your project type is based on what you're doing. We've also reached out to quite a bit of DFSS projects recently and identified what the HUD project type would be. So if you have any questions about that, again, reach out to the help desk and we'll be able to hopefully answer any of your questions. Okay, section 4 is going to be for target population. So projects can indicate a target population if they meet the following 2 criteria. The project intends to serve that specific population, and then at least 75% of the clients served by the project fits the target group descriptor. So only one target population may be selected per project. If the project doesn't serve a target population, you're going to indicate NA. So as you can see here, the target populations is either going to be DV or HIV. If you don't serve a target population, then you could just put NA. If you do choose DV as a target population, that indicates that you're not using HMIS. There should be no projects with a target population of DV that's funded to serve DV clients that's entering data into HMIS. So if you select DV, the additional question is going to ask what database do you enter the data in? In most cases, it might be InfoNet, but if it's not, you can write in what you're using to document client activity. Okay, Lauren, I do see your question. Can we please follow up with this right after the call? That's a very interesting call out. Okay, so section 5 is going to be for the units. Section 6 is going to be for bids. So they're broken out between the two. The way that units should be viewed is that units are going to represent households. And then the way that bids should always be viewed is that bids should represent individual clients. So when you're completing this unit inventory section, the unit should be viewed as the count of households that can be served. If a project is serving single clients, then the unit and bid inventory must be 1-to-1. So to kind of start off with the first question, 9, the total number of units. So that's going to be the cumulative total between questions 10, 11, and 12. So the total units shouldn't be lower or shouldn't be higher than what the cumulative count is. If it's a family household, so for example, if you only have family beds, then question 10 is going to be where you're documenting that activity, because question 10 is looking at family units with at least 1 adult, 1 child. So your unit count is going to be documented there, and that's going to be the overall household count, not necessarily the individual client counts that are going to be enrolled in the project. That's going to be different than question 11. So if you have a project with all single clients, or you're only serving single clients, then your unit inventory and your bid inventory is going to be 1-to-1. Just because, you know, every client is an individual client in their own household. So that count is going to be 1-to-1, which is going to be different than the family count. As you're completing the survey, if you don't have a house, or if you don't have units or bids applicable to any of these, you can put 0 in the text field to kind of move on to the next question. So if a household have 2 adults, is this considered a family unit? That's a good question. So the way that the enrollments work is that if you have 2 households together, they are going to be viewed as being in a household together. If you have 2 adults, just based on the group ID number, they are enrolled together. When it comes to breaking that out into the bed inventory, they're going to fall under single adult households. Just because the way that they view the inventory for households with at least one adult, one child, is that if there's no child in that household, then it's not going to get represented under that measure. Even though they are in a household together, and you can see that in HMIS, and they do have the same group ID number, in terms of how that is viewed in utilization, is not going to fall under there. Okay, we have another question. We have a shelter that has dorms that serve as units with other than one family, with more than one family in each. Okay, so this is a good question. So what you're indicating is that you have more than one family in a particular unit at your emergency shelter. So the bed and unit inventory shouldn't be 1-to-1, or it isn't representing the actual physical capacity of your facility. It's more so of the bed capacity. So in terms of the actual rooms that clients might be staying in, that might be different than the number of households that you're serving and the number of individual clients that you're able to serve. Okay, so for section 6 for beds, again, we kind of talked about it a little bit with the units, but your total number of beds in question 15 should be the cumulative total. Anything added in question 16, 17, 18 should not exceed or be under the total number of beds for 15. Again, if you have a family inventory, then your unit and beds cannot be 1-to-1. So you can't have a family inventory and say that you have 10 households and then there's also only 10 clients. So one thing that did get added to the bed section this year, section 6, is the bed dedications. So once you add in the total number of beds, there is going to be an additional question that's going to ask, are any of the beds that you reported dedicated to any population? So if you select yes, you're going to automatically get the youth and veteran question that's going to ask if the project has youth or veteran bids. And if so, you'll be able to document that. I'll show you on the next slide. And if you're permanent supportive only, you'll be able to see all of the questions here. So you'll be able to see the chronic question, the veterans, and the youth. The chronic homeless dedicated bid question is only going to populate if you choose permanent supportive housing as a project type in the previous questions in the survey. So the way that that's going to look is that so question 19 and 20 is asking about the youth and veteran dedicated bids. You'll be able to select if those bids are for single households or households with at least one child, one adult. If so, you'll be able to add that in. If not, you'll be able to add in 0 to indicate that that's not applicable. And again, for the chronic homeless bids, that's only going to populate if you selected that the project is permanent supportive housing. Okay, so we do have another question. If a unit is designed as a family, if a unit is designated as a family, but the children are grown and have left the unit, this still counts as a family unit. So the way that you should think about bid and unit inventories is that you should completely separate it from it being related to any physical room at your facility. So in your example, one thing to kind of understand is that if children were in a part of their enrollment and they aged out or they left the unit, so the way that I interpret that is that those clients were exited out of the project, so only the head of household might remain. So at that time, the net client becomes a single client. So it would no longer be counted as a group enrollment or a family enrollment. Once those additional household members leave, then they'll be viewed as a single client. Okay, so we do have another question. Would there be an option for snowfall projects? These are not CH, chronic homeless, but do only serve unsheltered. I'm not 100% sure if I'm understanding your question correctly. Okay, so for the just for the sake of time, I'll follow up with you in terms of how to document the bid and the unit inventory after this call. Okay, so section 7 is going to be dedicated to emergency shelter bids. Again, if you choose emergency shelter entry and exit or night by night, you're going to see the section. If you don't, then it's going to automatically skip to section 8. So what this is really gathering is that did any of your bids change from being year-round or seasonal bids in 2024? And then if it did change, then we're going to ask for you to document that, or if you had any overflow bids. So on the next slide here, you can see what the questions are asking. So one example of this might be is that if, let's say your project is funded for additional winter bids, which are going to be seasonal bids, you're going to want to make sure you document that in this section here. And that's only if those bids fall under the project that you're completing this survey for. So in some cases, if you receive additional funding for seasonal bids, and you're representing that under a new project, you're going to want to make sure that you're only representing those bids under the new project and you're not adding those seasonal bids anywhere else. Okay, so the next section, which should be section 8, is HMIS participation. This section is really going to ask, is all the bids participating in HMIS? So essentially are all the clients being documented in HMIS that the bid inventory is representing? If the answer is yes, then there's no additional questions. If only a portion of the bids are being represented in HMIS or clients are being represented under those bids in HMIS, then you're going to put in the box under the number of participating HMIS bids. If your bids are not participating in HMIS due to various reasons, you'll indicate no, but then in the following box, we are going to ask for an explanation of why this project doesn't participate in HMIS. If it's due to a project serving DV, then you would select the no, this project is a DV project, and there will be no additional question that's going to be asked after that. So the only way that you'll get this additional question is that if you select that none of the bids participate in HMIS. Okay, so the biggest change to the housing inventory count this year is going to be for permanent supportive housing projects. So previously, Section 10 or Section 10, Section 9 was dedicated to non-participating projects as well as permanent supportive housing projects to get the utilization for the night. So providers had to run the utilization report and then document that in this section here. So this year, we're not going to ask permanent supportive housing projects to document what their activity is. Essentially, that information is available in HMIS, and that's going to just be pulled a part of the HIC report. So one thing that I would mention, since that isn't a part of the survey, but if you do want to be mindful of what your counts are for permanent supportive housing projects, again, it's based on the housing moving date. So if you're running the utilization report, clients that are housed as of that point in time date are going to be the only clients included. But going forward, this section is only going to be for non-participating projects only. So again, if you selected in the previous section that this project doesn't participate in HMIS, or if you selected this project as DV elsewhere in the survey, then you'll see these two additional questions. And essentially what this is asking is for you to provide the number of clients that were served on the point in time date, and then also the number of households that were served on the point in time date. And that's only for non-participating projects, just because that data is not available in HMIS. Again, even though it's not participating, if you're a permanent housing project, PSH, Rapid Housing, other PH, the housing moving date is required, or a client being in housing is required. So if you have clients that have not yet moved to housing as of the point in time date, they should not be included in the clients being served on that date or in these counts here. Okay, question. For non-participating, would the bid count still need to be included here for the HIC? Yeah, so for non-participating projects, you're going to still complete the unit inventory and the bid inventory. And then that last section that's asking about what your bid or what your the clients that you served on the night of the count, the way that that is going to work is that essentially this is going to be compared to what you've documented for the unit and the bid inventory, and that's going to be your utilization for the night. Projects that's participating in HMIS, the clients that you served on a night, that data is already available in HMIS. So this survey is just looking to verify the unit and bid information is accurate. Okay, so we do have some resource links. The first one is the housing inventory count process overview. If you click on this link or if you go to this article on the left-hand side, you'll be able to see all the articles related to the HIC and the point in time count are all within the same section. So you'll be able to navigate to all of them from there. But we do provide links to all of the articles individually. So the housing inventory count workflow, that's going to be, okay, great. So those, or this workflow article is going to be the overview of the entire survey, and then also provide that PDF. And then the reference table is going to be where you'll be able to find the projects that are going to participate, as well as information already in HMIS about those projects that you can use as a reference. Okay, so we have another question. Similar to street outreach, can you confirm if drop-in centers are not participating? So yes, drop-in centers are not going to be required to participate in the housing inventory count. Is there a report in HMIS to generate and confirm the client bid count? So there is a report. It's the utilization report. Again, you can get to our utilization article from this housing inventory count overview article. It's going to be on the left-hand side of that that section. So you'll be able to use that report to see what the utilization for your project is. But again, in this iteration of the HIC survey, is not going to be an option for you to document what your bid count is the night of the count if you participate in HMIS already. Only for projects that don't participate in HMIS, we're going to ask for the client count and the household count the night of the count. Okay, and just really quickly, I know we're at time, but just to kind of go over the time frame really quick, is that the survey is going to open on the point in time date, which is January 23rd. You're not going to be able to access or start the survey prior to then. February 3rd, we're going to send out a reminder to everyone, just letting them know about a week is left. The 14th, the survey will close at the very end of the day. If you have any questions about the survey, please reach out prior to the week of the survey closing, so we'll be able to assist and have the time to do so. And again, no PDF submissions. Everything has to be submitted through Alchemer, and one survey has to be completed for each of the projects. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining. I know we are at time. I'll stay on the call for an additional 5-6 minutes to answer any additional questions. But again, thank you all for joining. Enjoy the rest of your day. Again, any questions, please reach out to the help desk. So what is Alchemer? So Alchemer is the survey platform that we use to capture all of the HIC information. Okay, so we do have a question. If we can provide the project or the list of projects that will need to participate. All of the links are available in chat. So if you go to the chat function and go to webinar, you'll be able to see all of those links there. For non-participating, how will the info get from PDF into Alchemer? So if you're a non-participating project and you have a project ID number in HMIS, you can complete the Alchemer survey. It's going to be a link that's going to take you to a web page to complete it. Once you do so, we'll get a copy of it. So there's no need to complete the PDF at all. If you want to fill it out maybe for your own records to have something to refer to as you're completing the survey in Alchemer, that's fine. But there's no reason to complete the PDF. Just what is online is what's needed. Okay, so I see your question in terms of the pay report and data populating. If possible, can you submit a ticket to helpdesk@allchicago.org and we'll be able to look into that for you and assist. So approximately how long does it take to complete the survey? This will be my first time participating. So it just really depends on, I would assume just having the information that's needed. So that's why I think downloading the PDF version is really important. It gives you a chance to gather all of the information that you're gonna need. I will say that this year the survey is shorter than it's ever been. So it would be quicker this year than it would have been last year. But it just depends on the information that you have available. But I don't think it'll take too long. All right, everyone. Again, thank you for joining. I am going to end the webinar now. Any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to helpdesk@allchicago.org. Again, the survey is going to open on the point in time date, which is Thursday, January 23rd. Again, have a great rest of your day, and I'm going to end the call. Thank you.